Hello, Lionesses. This is Bobby Carlton. I am the publisher and editor-in-chief of Lioness magazine, as well as the founder of Innovation Women. Today, I am talking with Yasmin Ferrine. She is the co-founder and general partner at Visible Hands Venture Capital. Welcome. Thanks for joining us today.
It's great to be with you. Thank you for having me, Bobby.
And thank you for making the time. You told me you had an unlikely trajectory for your career. Can we talk a little bit about this and how you got into investing and startups?
Yeah, so the investing part came first. Straight out of college, I found myself, barely 23 years old and managing a public equities mutual fund with one other person. And it was a $700 million small cap equities fund. So the investing part was the formative part of my career and really grounded me in the having a repeatable investing process and really thinking analytically. Certainly now in VC in an early stage, there's so many more qualitative elements around early stage investing, and it's not necessarily about free cash flow the way it was at the beginning of my career, but it was a fabulous orientation. I will say that, it's interesting because some of the advice that we give to founders around hiring their early team is not hiring people who have corporate backgrounds and really challenging whether there are other team members who may have come from a corporate trajectory can deal with the uncertainty or can deal with, the resource constraints. And I will say that I've had a pretty corporate trajectory. From there, I spent time after doing the public equities portion and the Great Recession happened, moved over to community investment strategy that deployed some philanthropic capital, also worked on some ESG related work, and then went to what I call family office land at an investment management firm where I was the New England head of business development and did a dual role around corporate strategy, which in all instances were not like startup environments in any way. But my startup experience is actually on the political side because I worked on a presidential campaign in 2020. And that's where I saw that I could manage the resource constraints and having to build Everest in 2 days and running through brick walls is something that everyone is expected to do. There's no weekend or no evening that you can be on your own time. And that is when I really experienced the entrepreneurial pace, and I haven't looked back since. So I think switching across sectors, having a really corporate rooted career makes me unlikely in the startup community.
So let me take you back to 10-year-old you. Did she imagine herself in a career like this?
Absolutely not. I'm trying to think if I wanted to be a baseball sports agent at that time or if I had gone to a take your daughters to work day at McKinsey and I was sold. I was ready for all the perks of a McKinsey career. So I think probably that was when I was 10 years old. So it was one of those two career trajectories, but definitely did not imagine, capital raising and VC as, what I'd love to do.
So speaking of love to do, tell me about Visible Hands. Why is it different than other investment organizations?
Yeah, so we are both a pre-seed fund and a fellowship. So there's a technical component aspect to the work we do. We are also singularly focused on underrepresented founders. So that's women and people of color who are, diversity as a theme for our investments from our portfolio company standpoint. Uh, I also think that being at such an early stage, at that point, getting to know founders is something that, we do intensively over 14 weeks. We're not the type of investors that see you at your investor day and read your quarterly newsletter. We're thinking through, customer validation with you, thinking through and really making sure you understand, that there truly is a customer on the end of your product, and that you have a tactical approach to a big vision.
And you have used Visible Hands really to address some systemic issues in investing and startups.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, we wanted to unlock the potential and the market opportunity of overlooked founders. It's well known that, venture capital really creates job creation, quality of jobs, and research and development, and yet the majority of the funding has gone to one archetype. And our mission is to prove the genius and prove the market opportunity that exists there. And, systemically, I really focus on capital raising in my role within my partnership. And, Black women, the research shows, have to meet with 7 times the amount of potential investors as their non-diverse counterparts. So many times we are classically in a situation where you have founders who, by the time they get to Series A, they've told me they're just exhausted, and that's when they're just starting to build their teams. But if you had to exponentially, sit through no's, and what I call paper cuts, you'll get to Series A and be exhausted. And that's not what Visible Hands is about. Visible Hands is about creating a community of support, accountability for the industry, and setting up our founders for success.
One of the things that you've incorporated into your program is this fellowship program. This is going into your overall program.
Yeah.
How does that work? And did I hear correctly that there's no demo day for your founders?
No, we do not believe in demo days. We think, I know we all have to figure out how to sift through a lot of talent, and how do we engage advisors, right, to play a role. And it makes so much sense why that is kind of the template. But I've been on the other end as an emerging manager of similar constructs where I have 15 minutes to explain how I want to disrupt venture capital. And it's kind of like a cruel joke. And so if I don't want to sit on the other end of it, why would I ask founders to do so? So what we've done is, just so the fellowship is clear, it's 14 weeks. We provide $25,000 at the beginning of the fellowship. We believe that the reason why many, for example, the largest growing component of entrepreneurs in America are also women of color, but they are disproportionately building, either bootstrapping, side hustling, or building sole proprietorships. We don't think it's because they can't dream big enough or have truly backable ideas. It's in many cases, there are valid financial reasons why you can't do that. So we don't believe in ramen entrepreneurship, and we provide the $25,000 upfront. Similarly, it's also an incentive. We see full-time employees who have been building businesses need some sort of safety net to move over to the entrepreneurial side full time. And then you work for 15 or 14 weeks to validate your idea, to make sure you have a venture backable team. And then provided the team and the TAM are both there, then we provide a follow-on of $150,000, $175,000, depending on the founding team, to be, a pre-seed investment in the company. And then we spend 9 months with these companies, introducing them to customers, Fortune 1000 executives, and also fundraising for the very reasons that I've stated. We do not anticipate that our founders are able to scale what others scale, in a quarter. Studios have found that it can take in your first, raise, closer to 8.5 months. And that's what we at least want to dedicate per company, 9 months to the fundraising exercise.
Wow. And I mean, all of that sounds amazing. Must make you the most popular game in town if you're a startup. How many, I got to ask, tell me a little bit about the kinds of startups you're working with, and you pick them from a massive, massive group.
Yes, we have. So we had 910 applicants apply. The largest cities represented were New York, then Boston, LA, then San Francisco, DC. We had 60% were women, 60% were Black and Latinx, and about 45% would call themselves a designer, an engineer, or a product manager. And the remaining had go-to-market skill set or some specific subject matter expertise. And I would say that we anticipated more pre-ideas stage, but we were largely MVP, prototype, and ready to fundraise in terms of the stage of company development that applied. And they really vary because we're sector agnostic. One thing that's interesting is it depends on the stage, but generalist funds can actually outperform sector specific funds, which kind of defies investing intuition. And I trained as a generalist, so I may be partial there. But we've seen kind of trends around aging and kind of re-envisioning family. Similarly, AR, VR as sector specific, fintech as well, and health tech have emerged as themes. And then internally, based on our own backgrounds, we divide our team in the future of commerce, future of education, future of work, and future of finance. So,
wow, that's quite the group, and it sounds like pretty much all of them are poised to change the world. When we were talking originally, it's like I was thinking about Visible Hands. It's just such a new breed in terms of investors. Like, can you talk a little bit about the big differences between what you're doing and how we would traditionally think about investors?
Yeah. So are you referring to my LP base, or are you referring to the GPs and like this emerging class of GPs?
I want to say yes,
All,
but
all of the above?
all of the above, because it really, our conversation, to me, this is a very different animal than we're used to seeing.
Right.
The fact that you're so deeply involved is different.
Yeah, so I would say I'm really excited about the emerging wave of GPs. When I look to my peers, thinking about Elizabeth Yin and what she's done at Hustle Fund, and how she came from an accelerator background as well. And so she's really has somewhat of a similar model where she provides a smaller check and then a much bigger check, and then she protects her ownership position even beyond that. But a due diligence process is different when I know if you return emails in the span of 14 weeks. I don't just see, if you return my emails in the span of, doing a due diligence process, right? And then similarly, others like Maria Salamanca at Unshackled, like these are, and the other thing too is what's really interesting is I see founders who are women who can actually pitch to GPs who are also women and talk about, aging and, um, products for mothers during, postpartum products and can do so freely where, understanding what community building looks like for these founders and what would be the needs of the customers in that community, like it's a lived experience, which I think is really exciting for this new wave of founders to be able to connect to their investors in different ways than typically before, who had check writing abilities, right? I'm also excited. Lolita Taub at Community Fund is another one who, not only does she speak to found, how she wants to support founders, she makes so many tools available publicly. And these are all women who in the last few years have become GPs, right? Like myself. So I'm really excited by the peer community. And I will say that we're collaborative, right? We're exceptionally collaborative. And similarly, I will also shout out the other fellowship programs, Techstars. They have been incredibly warm with us and collaborating with us. Mass Challenge has been incredibly warm. So both on the VC side and on the accelerator side, we all see the need for all of us to be in this space and to be catalysts for change together, and not compete. So that's, I would say, I think shows a new wave of a new breed of talent that's emerging. On the LP side, it's probably unusual for us. We have an institutional anchor in Bank of America who is a substantial LP in our fund. To be a fund one manager that didn't come from a traditional venture background, and to be in a team that hasn't invested together before, but yet Bank of America understands that the way they've thought about generational wealth building was small business. And now they have an opportunity to play in a completely different arena. And so I do think that there's a lot of opportunity, and it is an exciting time to be in this space.
Yay, applause. So as we close out this little conversation, what kind of advice and tips would you share with the entrepreneurs who are watching this?
Yes, I would share the advice I gave to candidates that applied, which is be really specific about your customer. Get customer feedback, validation before you fully build out a tech solution. It was like night and day talking to a founder who says, I know I can find my founder shopping on Amazon. My assumption was they wouldn't shop on Amazon. My assumption was, they'd be most likely, given their household income, to shop at XYZ places. And based on my customer feedback, and beyond, like being able to step outside of your own experience and talk about your customer and be able to talk about some of the assumptions that were debunked in that process, makes you a completely different investment prospect than someone who says, I'm interested, I have a vision in building a company. That's the starting point. That's literally like the 1 yard line.
Wow.
You really have a long way to go before you get to having insights that will unlock market opportunity. So I would just say it's great to have that big vision, but be able to articulate everything possible about your customer.
And that is so helpful, so awesome. Thank you again for joining us today. We've been talking with Yasmin Ferrine. She's the co-founder and a general partner at Visible Hands Venture Capital. Thank you again.
Thank you for having me.